The air inside the coffin was thick and suffocating. Panic set in as James gradually became aware of his surroundings. Cold and clammy, his fingers explored the confined space, finding the smooth surface of what around him. His heart raced as he realized he was trapped inside a coffin. Darkness enveloped him, and the only sounds were his labored breaths and the distant echo of dirt being shoveled above. A wave of nausea swept over him as the realization sank in. He was buried alive. His mind raced, desperately trying to recall the events leading to this nightmarish scenario. The last thing he remembered was going to bed in his cozy apartment, not expecting the cruel twist of fate that now imprisoned him in this morbid chamber. A sudden jolt of fear struck him when his fingers brushed against something cold and lifeless. He recoiled as he realized he was not alone in the confined space. Panic surged through him as he felt the unmistakable contours of a human body next to him. The air grew heavier as the stench of death invaded his senses. Summoning every ounce of courage, James fumbled for a source of light. His hand brushed against a small object, and he soon found a lighter in his pocket. The dim flame illuminated the interior of the coffin, revealing the gruesome truth. His worst nightmare materialized. A lifeless face, frozen in a twisted expression of agony, stared back at him. It was a corpse, inches away from his own face. A strangled scream escaped James' lips as he recoiled, struggling to comprehend the grotesque reality. The corpse's vacant eyes seemed to accuse him, though he couldn't fathom the connection between them. Was this some sick joke, a cruel prank played by a twisted mind? His hand shook as he felt the walls of the coffin, searching for any means of escape. The air grew thinner, and the suffocating darkness pressed in on him. He pounded against the lid, screaming for help, but the sound was swallowed by the earth above. In the midst of his desperation, a chilling realization dawned on him. The corpse beside him wasn't a stranger, it was him. James was trapped in a coffin with his own lifeless body. The implications of this twisted reality threatened to shatter his sanity. As the seconds ticked away, James grappled with the horrifying truth. He was both the living and the dead, entombed in a macabre prison. The darkness seemed to consume him, and the weight of the soil above pressed down relentlessly. In the depths of despair, James succumbed to the inevitable. The coffin became his eternal resting place, a claustrophobic abyss where the line between life and death blurred into a never-ending nightmare. The cold silence of the grave enveloped him as his consciousness faded into an eternal void. Days blurred into nights within the confines of the coffin, a timeless existence where James teetered on the edge of sanity. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, and thirst parched his throat, but escape seemed an impossible dream. The air grew stale, a stagnant reminder of his desperate situation. In the oppressive darkness, strange visions and whispers tormented James. Ghostly apparitions danced on the periphery of his perception, their ethereal forms mocking him. A haunting voice, a twisted echo of his own, murmured dreadful secrets and cryptic messages that further eroded his sanity. As the walls of the coffin seemed to close in, James felt an unsettling connection with the corpse beside him. It was as if the boundary between their worlds had blurred, and a macabre communion transpired in the shadows. Faces contorted with anguish visited his tortured dreams, and disembodied cries echoed through the abyss. One night, as the air grew heavier, James became aware of a subtle movement. The corpse beside him shifted, a grotesque parody of life. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched, frozen in terror. The dead eyes flickered with a semblance of awareness, sending shivers down James' spine. A ghastly whisper emanated from the lifeless lips of the corpse. "Escape, James. The key to your salvation lies within." Confused and terrified, James searched the corpse, his trembling hands exploring the cold, stiff limbs. In a macabre discovery, he found a small, rusted key clenched in the skeletal fingers. The revelation sent a chill down his spine. With newfound determination, James worked feverishly to unlock the coffin. The key turned reluctantly, and with a creak, the lid opened, revealing a world he thought he'd never see again, the dim glow of moonlight filtering through the cracks of a decaying wooden box. The graveyard stretched before him, eerily quiet in the pale moonlight. Tombstones loomed like silent sentinels, and the wind whispered through the overgrown grass, carrying the secrets of the dead. James emerged, gasping for breath, his senses assaulted by the overwhelming reality of the graveyard. His heart pounded with a mixture of terror and relief. The corpse in the coffin remained motionless, a silent witness to the bizarre events that had transpired. Haunted by the harrowing experience, James stumbled through the graveyard, desperate to unravel the mysteries that bound him to this macabre fate. The line between the living and the dead continued to blur, and the shadows seemed to conceal ancient secrets that threatened to consume him. As James ventured into the night, the graveyard whispered its secrets, and the spectral figures that had haunted his dreams became tangible entities. The line between life and death, reality and nightmare, grew thinner with every step, leading him deeper into the abyss of the unknown. James wandered through the moonlit graveyard, the air thick with an otherworldly tension. Each tombstone seemed to hold a whispered secret, and the shadows clung to the edges of reality like specters waiting to reveal their macabre truths. As he delved deeper into the graveyard, the apparitions that had haunted him in the coffin materialized around him. Faces twisted in anguish and sorrow, voices murmuring forgotten tales of lives cut short and destinies unfulfilled. The boundary between the living and the dead continued to blur, and James found himself caught in a surreal dance with the spectral entities. Among the gravestones, he discovered a weathered mausoleum, its heavy door slightly ajar. Intrigued and compelled by an unseen force, James entered the cold, dimly lit chamber. The air within carried the weight of centuries, and the silence seemed to pulse with a hidden energy. In the center of the mausoleum, an ancient tome lay open on a stone pedestal. The pages were filled with cryptic symbols and arcane writings, detailing the dark history of the graveyard and the sinister forces that bound it. As James read, the whispers of the dead grew louder, guiding him through the cryptic passages of the book. He learned of a cursed legacy that entwined the living with the deceased, a malevolent force that sought to bridge the gap between the realms. The key he had found in the coffin was a link to this supernatural web, a conduit between life and death. With each revelation, James felt a growing urgency. The graveyard held a malevolent intelligence, a consciousness that fed on the despair and fear of those ensnared in its clutches. He realized that the only way to break free from the grip of this spectral prison was to confront the source of the curse. Guided by the ethereal voices in the ancient tome, James navigated a labyrinthine passage beneath the graveyard. The air grew colder, and the ground beneath him seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. Finally, he reached a cavernous chamber where an otherworldly presence awaited. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, a specter draped in tattered robes, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly glow. The entity spoke with a voice that echoed through the depths of the underworld, revealing the tragic tale of a soul bound by a dark pact, cursed to perpetually weave the threads of life and death. In a moment of clarity, James understood that he held the key to breaking the curse. With determination, he offered the rusted key to the spectral entity, a symbolic gesture that severed the supernatural connection. The graveyard trembled, and the ethereal voices fell silent. As the curse lifted, the mausoleum crumbled around him, and the spectral figures faded into the dissipating shadows. James found himself standing in the moonlit graveyard once more, the weight of the supernatural burden lifted from his shoulders. The night air felt crisp, and the whispers of the graveyard were replaced by a serene silence. The graveyard, once a realm of nightmares, transformed into a peaceful resting place for the departed. James, though forever changed by the ordeal, walked away from the graveyard, guided by the faint glow of dawn on the horizon. The nightmare had ended, but the echoes of the supernatural lingered in the recesses of his mind. James carried the memories of the coffin, the cryptic tome, and the spectral figures with him, a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separated the realms of the living and the dead.
Like, subscribe, and click on notifications that allow you to stay up to date with the news and not miss the video from the channel, where there will be many more horror stories.